I must have been like 7 or 8. And my dad, he's a pastor. My whole family are pretty religious. So we would always help out as my dad was leading his church. So my role was in the tech team, and I was just there to help project the songs, help with the audio. I must have been like 15, like honestly, looking for a job. I would hand in my CV to fish and chip shop. They would tell me, "Oh yeah, you're overqualified," and I was like, "How can I be overqualified when I don't even have any grades?" Like I wasn't looking for, and all Notion for me was a game changer. This is not even no sponsorship, nothing. Like Notion, I think has changed my organization. I don't think I can talk about any app with so much like confidence. Uni is not easy at all. Like I think I can definitely say that uni was easily like one of the hardest, probably like most traumatizing periods of my life. Like not even just like from the work to all the random situations that you find yourself in, and loneliness, and people go through so much. And you come out of university and everyone just kind of talks about it like, yeah, I completed uni, and I'm like, it can't be the same 3 years that I suffered for that you're just you're just calling uni.
Welcome to the Valuable Podcast, where there's value in every conversation. I'm your host, Victor Sasanya, and today I am joined by Chibudom Onuorah, aka Chib. Chib is a software engineer at a top investment bank and Imperial College master's student. In this episode, we talk about Chib's journey into tech, studying computer science and teaching, as well as how to focus on your own journey and avoid comparison. So you're currently studying at Imperial and you're doing your master's. So can you talk to me a bit about what you study and what was the process like applying for a master's?
Sure. So I'm currently studying AI and machine learning at Imperial, and it's a master's of research. So what I'm studying, it's basically machine learning for COVID-19 prognosis. So it's working alongside some postdocs, some clinicians, some lecturers. And essentially what we're trying to do is that we're trying to train some machine learning models to not only diagnose COVID-19 from lung scans, but we're also trying to see if we can develop some models that can basically tell people how long they have left to live, if there's a critical point in which people need to be sent to the intensive care unit. So it's very, very, very current and very relevant research, and I guess it's exciting to be doing something that is just so it feels like very important, particularly because of what's going on in the world, and the fact that the results of our research are going to be very, very useful. So yeah, that's my master's.
What do you plan on doing when you finish your master's? Because I know that you do quite a few different things. You run your Instagram page, Chib Tech, and I've seen you've came back online sort of recently and been much more active on the page. So do you have any plans to grow that?
Yeah, I really do want to grow that page this year. I'm going to try and be consistent, and I'm looking to kind of like employ like a content a strategist or a virtual assistant. But I definitely think that once I finish my master's, I'll have so much more free time to be able to kind of like put towards content creation.
Yeah, and what's the purpose of the page? Like, why does it even exist?
Yeah, it's just educate, I'd say. Well, that's a lie. The initial reason was in my final year, I was just bored. It was lockdown. I lived alone. And I just thought, you know what, like, why not just document this journey? You're in your final year, about to graduate, about to do exams. You have quite a studious life. Why not talk about it? So it was kind of like a coping mechanism for me, I would say, during my final year. That's how it began. And then I decided to start putting out like more educational type of content.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, now I think it's just to kind of just share what I'm up to and also educate in a way.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And has definitely been educating me as I've been scrolling through the posts, watching your stories. And it's interesting that you said it was actually like a coping mechanism, because I think that when it comes to university, I'm a university student myself. People don't really talk about how difficult it can get. And I just went through a series of and I study economics, right? So it's not like I study a great humanities subject with lots of essays, but the 2 essays that I did have, it was like an experience that I've never been through before. And that was in the 3rd year, my final year, and I still got my dissertation to go. So it's interesting that for you, kind of vlogging, would I say, or sort of like posting was your coping mechanism. And now you've turned that into educational content. What exactly do you sort of teach or put out there?
Well, the plan is that I want to be able to talk a lot about just technical concepts that people tend to hear and might not really know about. So particularly pertaining to like AI, machine learning, cloud computing. You hear all these buzzwords, but I don't know if people actually really know what these things mean or, what they actually are used for in a practical sense. So I want to kind of just be able to break down some of these concepts and also give people an insight into, the different types of roles that are available as well in the tech sector.
Yes, and you're very big. You're very big in tech. I see your name. I see your name in tech. Tech, and it's a buzzword, and your name literally comes side by side with it. So, how did you even get into tech? Like, is that something you stumbled across? Because I know that you took computer science at university. Now you're doing artificial intelligence. But where did this stem from? Like, honestly.
Yeah. So it basically began. I think I must have been like 7 or 8. And my dad, he's a pastor. My whole family are pretty religious. So we would always help out as my dad was leading his church. So my role was in the tech team, and I was just there to help project the songs, help with the audio. So I think subconsciously that interest in tech kind of grew during my time at the church. And then during my GCSEs, so the year that I was meant to start my GCSEs, my school introduced computer science for the very first time. So they were really trying to recruit people onto the course. So they brought us all to a room and gave us a short video and just basically said, this is what comp sci is. I can't even remember what the video is, but they showed us lots of really cool stuff like robots and things that we never actually got to learn about. But I think they had to just entice us somehow. And I fell for the trap. Ended up taking comp sci as a GCSE, but I did really, really well. I got an A star, which was great at the time. And I thought, and I also I enjoyed the course, particularly more than others. I feel like a lot of people kind of stumbled into the GCSE and hated it. But I actually enjoyed it. So I thought, you know what, let me do this for an A level as well. So I did it in the International Baccalaureate. I took it as a higher level subject. And I also, I enjoyed it. I did pretty well. So I thought, you know what, let me do it for university. And that's kind of how I ended up doing it as my undergrad degree and now specializing in it for my postgrad degree.
Wow, it's actually been a journey. So according to you, so you've been like studying computer science for like 6-7 years?
Because it's been 10 years, yeah.
10 years. Wow. Okay. So it's not just something that's rose from the surface. And obviously you said that it actually stemmed from whilst you were back in church, helping out with the projectors, the sound, the audio. So over that 10 years, you have a lot of experience at such a young age, and we can see this as you're employed, you're working in the field whilst doing your master's. But for somebody that wants to get into tech, what would you recommend, especially since you've done sort of the formal traditional GCSE, A-level, degree level, but let's say somebody is not at university right now, or they're at university or they're studying something completely different, but of course no one wants to get left behind, so including myself. So what would you recommend?
So I think it's interesting now because the way the tech sector is evolving, there's this encouragement for people who are not from STEM backgrounds or who might not have studied comp sci. There are more and more avenues for people to get into tech. And if I had known, I might have done something easier for my undergrad. But the point is that there are so many boot camps, there are so many online courses, YouTube, so many things online that you can use to learn how to program or learn how to code that a degree in computer science is like sometimes now no longer as important. And I think what I've definitely seen through my exposure to the corporate world is that there are a lot of engineers, there are a lot of people that have done things like economics and just different degrees that are not computer science, but they're doing these jobs that require a lot of coding, and most of these people are self-taught, or maybe they might have taken like an optional module during university. But yeah, most of these people are self-taught programmers, and a lot of jobs nowadays, particularly grad jobs, they will give you that leeway to learn. So yeah, I would just say that now, you don't have to have a degree, but if you can find some sort of boot camp or online course, you can definitely learn enough to be able to get a job in tech.
What would you recommend then? Because when you say online courses, boot camps, are they free? Are they paid? Do you recommend doing the paid one? Do you recommend doing the free one? Are there apps, websites? Like, do you have any particular names?
Yeah, so shameless plug. I did a post on this on my Instagram. So I posted apps that you can use to learn how to code, like on your phone, on the go. One that stands out to me is Solo Learn. That's one that I found on the App Store as well, and it had pretty good ratings. The popular ones are things like Coursera, Data Camp, Fast.ai. And Fast.ai is definitely free. With Coursera, I think there are some that are paid, some that are free, but you can always find a free sort of like a course, always. Even on YouTube, which is free, there are like, whole courses, whole boot camps. Some of them are like 5-6 hours long. But yeah, so you can always find something.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll go into more detail in our weekly newsletter. So if you're listening, make sure you are subscribed. But I do have one burning question. What is GitHub? And the reason why I ask this, so in terms of my experience with coding or programming, the first time ever is through Stata. So it's a statistical package, if anyone doesn't know what that is. So for my dissertation, we have to use it to run, regressions and analysis. So the first time I'm using Stata, but like you sort of just have to learn how to use it. So I'm typing on Google, like, how do you do this? How do you do that? Or let's just say for any other sort of module, I'm always typing. And there's one website in particular that comes up a lot, and it's GitHub, like for solutions. It's kind of like your, what's that website that like Reddit or something, but GitHub comes up, and I go on GitHub and I'm just seeing loads of lines of like letters, numbers, codes. And I'm always curious because I've heard it before as like a major platform in the tech space. So could you explain what that is and why one would use it?
Yeah, of course. So GitHub is basically just like an online portfolio that anyone can use, and it's free. So you basically can upload your code to GitHub, and you can make this public, you can share it, and it's just a way to basically like store your code. And it also offers this thing called version control. So you might have heard of Git, and if you're a programmer, you would definitely know Git. And it's just a way to kind of keep track of your code as it changes. So if you make a major mistake in your code, you might want to roll back your code to what it looked like 5 days ago. So it has this functionality that allows you to basically like keep track of your code as it changes. And it gives you the ability to kind of like roll back and merge your code with other people and collaborate. But yeah, so that's the version control aspect. But the main essence of GitHub is basically like an online storage for your code. So you often see other people's code or other people's examples of code. And as a programmer, seeing other people's code is always helpful, particularly as someone who's trying to learn as well. So I hope that makes sense and explains what GitHub is.
No, it does. So would you say then it's useful to somebody who's getting into tech, wants to sort of build a portfolio of their code and show their skills? So is this something employers look at all? Like, is this relevant on a CV, or is it just sort of like between friends?
100% is relevant on the CV. So if you are applying for a software engineering role or any sort of like tech role, and you have a GitHub that you can sometimes they actually ask you for the link in your application. But if not, you can always put it on your CV. And it's just a way of showing the employer the fact that one, you know how to code, and two, you actually have enough interest to pursue it in your spare time. So it's 100%. It's like the best way to kind of like make your application stand out a little bit more. As long as the code is good as well.
No, that makes sense. And so is that how you sort of stood out in your applications? Because I've seen you've been very successful. You've worked at investment banks, you've worked at hedge funds. So what makes your application stand out when you're applying to all of these big firms?
Okay, it's a bit embarrassing, but my GitHub right now is not in the best state, and I actually have it on my to-do list. Today, I put it on my to-do list that this month I must sort out my GitHub because I have so many projects, and if I could just put them all in one space, I think it'd be quite impressive. But I just haven't had the time yet, and it's it's poor of me, but so I haven't ever put a GitHub in my application, but I probably should. But I think what helps my applications at this point anyway, I think it's my previous experience. So the different places that I've interned at, that always helps me now. But obviously there was a point where I didn't have that experience. So what I think helped me then was just talking about projects that I had done in my spare time. So before I had like major names on my CV, I would just talk about things I did in my spare time, code that I had written, and just sounding excited about it always helps as well.
And you mentioned projects, like you have a lot of big projects now that you want to get on GitHub. You've done a lot of personal projects before you applied and got big firms on your CV. So when you say projects, like I'm curious, is that like a tech specific project? Is that like a personal project, such as I want to make my own website? What exactly does projects mean?
Okay, so honestly, I'm not the type of person that will just code in their spare time. I've never been that person. But because I've studied comp sci, I've always got coursework that I can talk about. And like if you have coursework, sometimes you don't necessarily explicitly have to say this was coursework. You can just say, oh yeah, I did this, and it just sounds like you have basically done this. I mean, if you want to, you can kind of imply that you did it in your spare time, or you can let them know that you did it in school. I don't think it actually really makes a difference. But I found that talking about coursework really, really helped me a lot, particularly early on. But nowadays I tend to talk about bigger things I've done, like for example, my undergraduate dissertation. That was a really hefty piece of work, and for any sort of interview coming up, that will definitely be part of the conversation.
I see. Dissertation. What was it? 10,000 words or?
No, mine was about 19,000. Yeah.
19,000 words.
Yeah.
Wow, that is wait. Okay, so explain to me how you conquered this dissertation. And you got a first class at university, right?
Yeah.
Wow, so congratulations for that. That just shows that you are a very, very hard worker. You're very, very intelligent, but on the Valuable Podcast, we're trying to understand how we get there. So what was the process like completing a dissertation? So that's from sort of writing up all of these words or finding an interesting sort of research project. What exactly was your dissertation on?
Yeah, so for a computer science dissertation, you have the first component is actually the coding. So that doesn't even count towards your words. So I spent months coding, maybe like 6 months coding, and then probably like a month and a half trying to write everything up. I think the first step is trying to figure out what exactly you want to make. So I knew I wanted to do something related to machine learning. I just didn't really know what it is I wanted to make. So the first thing that came to me is, okay, can I make some sort of like algorithmic trader, like a program that would just trade based on something like news or just based on machine learning, etc. And then I did some research and I figured out I learned some theories, and I realized that this was pretty much a futile task that I was trying to attempt. And if anything, I was going to get an accuracy of a pretty low number. So what I decided to do was to switch it a little bit and to just create a machine learning program that would basically price an option. I know you do econ, so I don't know how familiar you are with some of these financial products, but
I options is something that I was on the options desk, or I basically covered options on my internships. Yeah. So we had to learn about most of these terms. Okay, so on option, the only reason it's a bit embarrassing because if I was to tell you what option is for the audience, off the top of my head, I cannot remember. But no, so yeah, so I was basically I think my last presentation of my internships, I had to present to like MDs and like people in the firm was an FX option. So basically, I think what was my option on? So I think my option was on cable, so like pound versus dollar, and I think I was shorted, e.g. sell the currency, and you had to basically express your view in terms of an option. So those different ones. I think I chose a reverse knockout option. Getting very technical here, but yeah, those different ones.
Yeah.
But that's what I was working on. But yeah, honestly, options is it's a whole load of complex stuff.
Yeah, and I think to anyone that doesn't know what an option is, from my memory, an option is like a financial derivative that basically gives you the option to buy or sell a particular like stock, but you have the option, but it's not like an obligation to. I hope that makes sense.
It makes sense to me, very simple. And I think I'll just add on to that. You basically, to get the right to that option, you have to pay a premium. So how do we put this in simple terms? So if I want, like Chib said, it can be stock, it can be FX, it can be anything, but just if a stock is very much simple. So if there was an Apple stock and I thought that the price of Apple is going to go up $20, but I didn't necessarily want to go into the spot market, so basically buy Apple right now at its current price, what I could do is look for an option that will give me the right to basically buy Apple at a price which is near its current price, but I'll have to pay a premium to get that right. So
yeah, and to add to that, I think you have like a deadline as well.
An expiry date.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot. Listen, there's so much. If we were to stay
finance, it becomes a finance.
We'll be here for hours. But no, honestly, I think it's interesting. I think it's actually good to talk about. So if you're subscribed to the newsletter, this is something that I might touch up on in terms of options and maybe give you a much more accurate, maybe Google researched definition. But yeah, no. So your dissertation was how to price an option.
Yeah, so it's using machine learning to price an option.
Wow. And did you find success in that? Like, have you ever tested that? Or?
Yeah, so have you heard of the Black-Scholes equation? I'm assuming you have, right?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Yeah, so that Black-Scholes equation, it's sort of like a theoretical price of an option, but obviously it's very much flawed. There are huge assumptions with the Black-Scholes. So I was basically just like comparing against the Black-Scholes and seeing if I could use machine learning to price the option and compare how correct the price was, or how close it was to the actual price, and then compare how close the Black-Scholes was to the actual price. And obviously, because the Black-Scholes is just so it's not great, my machine learning model outperformed the Black-Scholes each and every time.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
but it's not that impressive because the Black-Scholes is actually like really bad.
Yeah, but given you done your dissertation in less than a year, because it's your final year, in fact, a couple of months to be honest, it's a lot of sort of research compiled into that 19,000 words. And whilst doing your dissertation, I know people give out like shout outs on the dissertation. Were there any special mentions?
Yeah, of course. I mentioned just for example, my friend Emeka, he did finance at uni, the same uni that I went to as well. But because I was doing comp sci, I was quite eager to get on with the ML stuff, but I didn't actually understand options. Like fundamentally, I was really struggling to kind of get my mind around the concept of an option and the difference between an option and a future. And then I had a Black-Scholes equation. I was just trying to understand what this Black-Scholes equation was doing. And so he really helped break things down to me. And I was asking him all sorts of questions. And yeah, he really helped break that down to me. So I had to put him on there. And also the people that, I could just like vent to and just, complain to, and they would listen to my complaints. I had to put them on there as well. So and also I had a really good friend. He put me in touch with some options. What was he, an options trader or an options quant, something like that anyway. So I had a friend of mine who actually put me in touch with someone who was doing that sort of work within the industry. So he was also able to give me a lot of direction as to how my dissertation should go. So yeah, I think it's just really important. When it comes to a dissertation, it's kind of like your work, but there are so many people involved that will help you make that piece of work actually something good.
Wow, no, that's really good. I feel like as final year student and many people doing dissertations, it's sort of like you're in it alone. Like literally, this is you, the dissertation, and whether you're going to graduate or not. So the fact that you had like a great support system, and it sounds like a lot of your friends are very intellectual, very knowledgeable, working in finance, and you built up a very, very good network for yourself. So do you have any tips on actually getting into some of these spaces where you can, for example, breaking into finance? I know you have a tech role, but it's in an investment bank. So probably you have a lot of financial sort of peers, networks, and social circles. So how does one break into it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say as a university student, the best way to kind of meet people who have similar interests is to attend networking events. So for example, recruitment companies, like diversity recruitment companies like Rare and SEO, they always have these sorts of like events for people who are interested in applying for finance programs or interested in learning more. And if you go to a couple of those events, you begin to start seeing the same people again and again. And I think that's kind of how I've made quite a lot of my friends, actually, just by meeting them at networking events. And some of them now, like we now work in the same company, or we are just down the road from each other because we work in Canary Wharf. But yeah, I'm really grateful for those events because, starting a graduate job, you feel like just a single person in the midst of thousands and thousands of people. But having that network of people that you kind of like met over the years allows you to kind of feel more comfortable, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely, like, not to even sugarcoat it, because like not even tech, like you're a Black woman in tech. And so already statistically you're a minority, you're the minority. So like the fact that you've built up a good network, would you say you got a lot of sort of women that are Black or, much like you in that network?
Well, not in tech. And probably I would say that I've met more men. I would definitely say I've definitely met a lot of Black men through these like networking events, etc. I still feel like Black women, are still a minority in some of these spaces, tech, even like finance as well. But yeah, I'm meeting more as I'm like going into office more. But I would definitely say that I've met a lot of men that are also Black and also work in similar spaces.
Yeah. And with the amount of like sort of experience you've had in tech and the projects you're doing, I know that you were born in Nigeria. I'm not sure if you've been back or you plan to go back anytime soon, but like, do you know what the sort of digital landscape is there, or the technical landscape in Nigeria?
Oh, I wish I could answer this better. I really did want to go back to Nigeria and just try and contribute, and also just to be more in touch with my heritage. But honestly, I can't tell you much about the digital landscape in Nigeria just because I feel like I haven't been exposed to it much. But the kind of like most recent exposure I have had to Nigeria was a boot camp that I helped to put on, and I did that in collaboration with the university. And because of COVID, I wasn't able to be there in person, but there was a lot of interaction, like online and email communications, etc. And we were able to put on the Python bootcamp, and I found that the reception was really, really good. Like people were really, really interested, and obviously I can't speak for Nigeria as a whole, but for that one program that I did find that there was a lot of interest, particularly in the machine learning aspect of it.
You run a boot camp for students in Nigeria.
Yeah, it was a university in Nigeria. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And I see that you run a lot of these boot camps and training courses, etc., etc. And you've done some in London, I believe, some universities in London.
Yeah, yeah.
So how did you even get into teaching? Like you're still a student, yet you're teaching other students that, and these are not no small institutions. Like we're talking top 10 league tables sort of institutions. So like, how did you become so valuable in order to get there?
Well, I feel like in terms of teaching, I started it as a job. So the earliest point I can remember teaching is probably like in year 12. So after I'd done my GCSEs. So as soon as I got my GCSE grades and I did well, I decided to just start teaching it. And I have found, like, as a student, teaching is one of the most like lucrative jobs that require like quite minimal effort. So throughout my time at university, I was teaching. I was doing online tuition, and it was basically like sustaining me and allowing me to like do things like order food all the time. So that's how I started tutoring. I just used to do it as a job. And as time went on, as I got a bit older and more exposed, I was starting to get opportunities to kind of teach like bigger classes and do it in person and kind of like lead and curate courses. So that's kind of how what I'm doing now. But definitely previously, for years, I was teaching one-on-one math lessons and computer science lessons.
What's a reoccurring theme for you? It's like every time I think like you've just done something, you sort of show me that this is not, it didn't happen overnight. Like I've been doing this and it actually goes to show how early you started in a lot of things, such as with tech, with coding, with teaching. Like we're talking year 12. So like how was 17 years old? How old are you back then?
Yeah, 17, maybe 16, I can't remember. Yeah.
Wow. So like, yeah, so the reoccurring theme that I've seen is that you started early, and I'm just wondering like what spurred you, like what motivates you? Because as much as you can sort of talk to us about the hard times and the difficulty, I genuinely believe that you love what you do. Like, I genuinely believe that. So I'm just curious to know, like, how does one get so in touch with, a certain sort of passion or hobby, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I remember feeling this kind of feeling. I think I must have been in like year 10. And I just used to think to myself, like, what am I good at and what am I interested in enough to just make my thing? And I didn't know for ages and ages, I didn't know. But I think it's important not to put too much pressure on yourself to like figure out, that thing that you like or that thing that you're going to become amazing at, and just kind of like let things unfold and, explore different interests. And as time goes by and as, you network more or get more exposure, get more opportunities, you will kind of like carve out that niche for yourself. But in terms of like teaching, in all honesty, I was just looking for a job. Like I wanted to work, and I tried to apply to fish and chip shop. I tried to apply for like a retail job. I must have been like 15, like honestly looking for a job. I would hand in my CV to fish and chip shop. They would tell me, oh yeah, you're overqualified. And I was like, how can I be overqualified when I don't even have any grades? Like I was looking for, and all of my friends had jobs in retail, like shops like Hollister, Ralph Lauren. And I was trying, I just couldn't get any of it. So I had to basically start offering tuition. And that was how I was making my money. But if not, I would have definitely just gotten a regular job. But it's just the fact that I couldn't get one that made me start tutoring, and that over time became more and more profitable for me. So I just continued.
Wow, then you persevered, and it shows that entrepreneurial side to you instead of just like quitting. Because some would actually think you can't get a job. Because I'm sure we've all been there. Like you turn 16 or you turn, I don't know what age is it you get your national insurance number. What It doesn't matter the age. Once you get your national insurance number in the post, you're out applying for jobs.
Yeah.
Because that was me. So I thankfully got into retail, but I started at the bottom. So my first job, actually, wait. Tell her that. So my first ever job was actually in Debenhams, but it was because Debenhams basically has lots of brands. So I was hired by Jack and Jones in Debenhams. So my contract was basically Jack and Jones. So I basically managed the Jack and Jones area in Debenhams. And I remember I think it was 4-hour shift. So sort of a thing where I was just standing there folding clothes. People used to come. Do you have it in this size?
That was my dream. Like that was my dream.
Really? No, it wasn't mine. So honestly, because I got this job, I remember so clearly. So I was in year 11 because I remember my friend's house used to be not too far. So I used to sometimes sleep at his house, shower, then go to work. Then basically I changed jobs. So whilst I was in that job, I said something's got to give because I need to get out of here. So basically I applied to Matalan thinking this was going to be better. And I entered Matalan and they paid me minimum wage. As in, this was like this was like maybe 6 years ago now, but they paid me minimum wage. And minimum wage is increased by the time like I was working there. So, but I remember I was just sort of like yourself, I needed money, right? And I feel like being at Matalan for maybe I was there for like 3 months because basically I moved again, but it kind of nurtured me and it showed me so much more about the process in terms of like, you need to actually go through some experiences in order to make you more resilient, in order to give you different perspectives. Because although I was working there, I actually felt privileged because I used to complain, I hate this job, but I know if I quit, like I'm still sort of good. Like I'm going to go to school, I'm going to hopefully get good grades, etc. But some people who were working there, that wasn't the case for them. So they were like, adults and they were saying the same thing as me, like, oh, I hate this job, but it's sort of like they had liabilities, like they had to pay. It's not like they can just quit so easily. But I ended up quitting eventually because I got another job in John Lewis, and I worked that job throughout sixth form. Then I went into university. So, but yeah, it's interesting that you started off tutoring, like in terms of tuition, and you've built that to now.
Yeah, honestly, like what you've described was like my literal dream. Like in year 11, year 12, all I wanted was a retail job. And I feel like everyone that had retail jobs, they just seemed so responsible and so mature. So yeah, it's always kind of a shame when you can't really get that thing that you want. But I guess it worked out in the end. So
yeah, for sure. And 2022, is there anything that you want then? Like what are you sort of hoping for this year? I know you mentioned you want to sort of get your GitHub together, but is there anything in terms of goals, in terms of big projects, personal projects, anything that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so I mean, I do have some major goals this year, but these are pretty much like finance, like personal finance and career related. But like I'd say like my main goal is just to like complete this master's. Like I just want to get it out of the way. Like at this point, I just want to finish and get the master's. I don't even care what grade. I don't want the master's. So hopefully I finish the master's this year. And that will just give me more free time to do other things like, I don't know, business or content creation. I think I just miss having that spare time to do things I actually am more interested in.
You've mentioned quite a lot that you're busy with your new job, with your work. So I've seen that you use an application called Notion. Do you still currently use that to manage your time or your workflow, or is there any other things that you use?
Yeah, I do use Notion. I've been meaning to post how I use Notion, but Notion for me was a game changer. This is not even no sponsorship, nothing. Like Notion, I think has changed my organization. I don't think I can talk about any app with so much like confidence. I started using. Do you use Notion by any chance?
Yes, I'll tell you the truth. I started using Notion, I think, because of you. I honestly think I saw Instagram story of Notion and one other application you use to lock yourself out your phone or something like that.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So I've definitely been a fan, and I've definitely picked up some of that value and I've applied it to my life, but I'm just not an expert yet at using it in terms of the layouts to really get the efficiency that I want. So talk to me about how you use it.
Okay, yeah, this week I'm gonna post it because I recorded it. I just forgot to post it. But Notion, I can talk about Notion like as if they're paying me, but they're not even paying me. Like Notion is so good. It does take a while to kind of get to grips with it. But it you can basically have your whole life in one application. Like you can organize different parts of your life. So I have a section for had a section for my undergrad. I had a section for just like my personal development. I set my monthly goals on Notion. Any sort of like thoughts that I have, I write it down in Notion, and it's just a good place to have everything. And you can access it on your laptop, you can access it via the internet, and in writing my lecture notes as well, it has a very, very good structure, and it looks very clean. And the fact that you can, sorry, this is just so nerdy of me, but I love Notion. The fact that you can like collapse and basically decollapse, it means that you can basically see like 10 weeks worth of information and just collapse it all into just titles. So it just gives you this very neat way of looking at things and organizing yourself. So yeah, I would really, really encourage it. And I'm going to try and post my how I use Notion on my Instagram.
Is it possible that you can sort of get up an article about how to use Notion? Maybe we can attach it to our mailing list,
Sure.
to our newsletters for the subscribers.
100%.
Perfect. And you talked a bit about personal development, a space that you have in Notion. So what does personal development mean to you?
Yeah, so things like my career, my long-term goals, things I want to buy, even things like makeup, I have it all written down. So I have a section called like career roadmap where I just sometimes when I'm bored or procrastinating, I just kind of sit down and write kind of what I have planned for the next year, 5 years, 10 years. And then I can always go back and see, okay, this is how I was thinking 3 months ago. I've had a little bit of a change. Let me write this down. So that's my career roadmap. I have this like application checklist. So when I was doing applications, I had like a spreadsheet where I had all the different places I wanted to apply to and how far I'd gotten. So yeah, different parts of my self-development, things I'm trying to do. Also, I have this habit tracker as well. So there are a couple of things I wanted to try and do every day, and you can also track that on Notion. So I was trying to work out, pray, drink 2 liters of water, all of these like, personal things, you can track them on Notion. I feel like I've talked about Notion so much, but yeah, I would really say it's a great app if you can just take the time to learn it. I do understand that it's quite difficult to kind of get your head around, but they have templates. So I would suggest people just, if you're trying to get started with Notion, use their templates.
Do you think you'll ever come back to Warwick to do anything in terms of speaking or in terms of societies or giving back some value that you've amassed over time?
I would love to, I would absolutely love to. I think it's just that I'm in a very, very tough time, in a very busy time, sorry, in terms of my job and my master's. But once I'm able to get a bit of free time, I will definitely try and go back. I think it's just great to be able to see the different people that interact with me on social media. I met someone who like followed me on TikTok, and she was also in Warwick Uni and in the ACS. So just being able to meet her and seeing how people's experiences are and being in a position to be able to kind of give advice is something that I really, really enjoy. Because, like uni is not easy at all. Like I think I can definitely say that uni was easily like one of the hardest, probably like most traumatizing periods of my life. Like not even just like from the work to all the random situations that you find yourself in and loneliness, and people go through so much, and you come out of university and everyone just kind of talks about it like, yeah, I completed uni, and I'm like, it can't be the same 3 years that I suffered for that you're just you're just calling uni. Like I don't think people understand how much we go through, not even just on a work level, but just like personally, emotionally, mentally. it's a lot. So anytime I have the opportunity to talk to somebody and just tell them, you know what, try and do this, try and stay away from this, I would, because I wish I kind of had that person when I was in first year.
No, it's so good. And I think that you're doing so much amazing things, and so many people actually look up to you and take so much value from what you're doing, because you actually don't know how much people you're inspiring where they don't actually reach out to you, but they, like I said, they talk about you, put your name in different rooms.
One thing I wanted to just kind of talk about is the fact that, you know, I think everybody is trying to be something. Everybody's trying to work towards something. And I guess if you're listening to this podcast, you're definitely someone that probably has pretty high ambition, or is probably trying to, I don't know, increase their ambition. But I think that, you know, it's important that we don't kind of what's it called, maybe put too much pressure on ourselves by looking at what other people are doing, because I can definitely say from my experience, no matter what you achieve, there is always somebody that's doing something different, or something that appears better than you. And I think that sometimes we put ourselves down when we compare ourselves to others, and particularly in the tech industry and finance industry, or even in university. You know, you're in these very competitive environments, and it can become quite natural to just kind of feel like you're competing against people. But I think it's just important to understand that you are in your own lane, and, you know, if something is meant for you and you put the work towards it, you will definitely achieve it, regardless of if you achieve it in 5 years or in 2 months, or etc. So I just wanted to just let everybody know that, you know, if you're trying to achieve something or work towards something, you know, just keep on going at it and practicing, and you know, try not to compare yourself too much to the next person, because that's how you that's how you get sad. Like,
Wow. No, absolutely. Comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that is so key. And I wish I've learned that myself earlier. I think the key thing you said, that is, no matter where you look and how big or good you think you are, there's always somebody that appears to be better. And I think obviously there's two perspectives to look at it. It doesn't mean that you can't look at someone and aspire to sort of be like them in terms of motivation, but I think what Chib is trying to say is, like, do not just put all the pressure on yourself, and, you know, let that affect your mental health, let that affect your work rate, let that even affect your gratitude, because sometimes we just need to stop and take stock, like, how far have I come, and congratulate yourself, give yourself a clap, a pat on the back, because in this thing we call life, right, you know, it's not for the swift. It's not for the swift at all. You want to make sure that you finish well. So thank you so much, Chib. You dropped a lot of value on the podcast. Can you just quickly say where they can find you, follow you, support you?
Sure, yeah. Thank you for having me as well. It's been a really good conversation, actually. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. So my ChibTech account, that's chib.tech. And I also go by the same handle on TikTok as well.
Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and follow us on social media at Valuable Podcast. Last but not least, for exclusive detailed content, sign up for the weekly newsletter at www.valuablepodcast.com. Remember, increase the value you provide and you'll rise in due time.